Hi everyone, we're going to continue in this video looking at graphs of circles and ellipses, or actually what we end up looking at here is part of a circle or part of an ellipse. So this first one, again, I didn't leave myself room for the little bit of algebra that happens. We have this x equals the square root of 16 minus y squared. So it might not be immediately obvious that we're working on circle or ellipse, but if you start doing a little rearranging, trying to get it back to look something more like this x squared plus y squared equals 1 type of format, you could square both sides. There's your x squared. And you could add y squared to both sides. So x squared plus y squared equals 16. So if you'd like, you can divide out that 16, or if you remember that x squared plus y squared equals r squared version, you should be able to spot that this is a circle, radius 1. There's no horizontal stretch or, oh wait, what am I saying here? All right, I'm going to do it. I have my brain too much in the other way. There is a stretch. Okay, so we have a circle stretched both ways by 4. So a circle with radius 4 centered at the origin. There's no horizontal or vertical shift. That's what this is. However, if you start thinking about working your way backwards, we started with the circle. This is still definitely a circle. Subtracting a y squared shouldn't change that. Should still be a circle. I'm just rearranging it. But here, there's kind of a problem. If you square root both sides of an equation, you need to include plus or minus. So by not including a plus or minus, we've actually lost half of the circle. So figuring out which half of the circle is important. Okay, so first thing, I have a circle, radius 4 centered at the origin. Second thing, I need to cut it in half. And the original equation should tell you really clearly which half you have. Here I have x equals the square root of stuff. Remember, square roots never give back negative numbers unless they're negative roots. So this being a positive root means I'm only going to get 0 or a positive number on this side, which means I can only get 0 or a positive number for x if those two things are equal. So this is the right half. Only non-negative x values, 0 or positive. So it's the right half of a circle with radius 4. So centered at the origin, radius is 4. So we're going to go up and down 4, and we're going to go right 4. We are not going to go left 4 because we only get the right half. So what we get is the part of that circle that doesn't have negative x values. So it's good to recognize what this is, and this also should really reinforce why plus and minus is so important when you take the square root. It makes a huge difference. We're only getting half of our graph because of that. Okay, second one, we have a y equals the square root of 1 minus x squared over 4. And there's variations on how this one will look. Once again, I see that same sort of structure. I see the x squared, the 1 minus, the square root. So when I get rid of the square root, I would get my y squared. I could then add the x squared over 4. And it doesn't actually matter if you put the x squared first or the y squared first. So I just kind of default to that x and then y, but it's up to you. So again, I don't see any shifting on this one. I see an ellipse this time. So we have to go 2 plus or minus 2 to get to the left and right side, whereas we only have to go plus or minus 1 to get to the top and the bottom. Okay, so we have ellipse centered at the origin that heads out 2 to the left and right and 1 up and down. But once again, if we think about working our way backwards, this is an entire ellipse. This is still an entire ellipse. Moving the x squared over 4 over to the other side does not change that. But here, once again, if we're working our way backwards, we have a little trouble because when we took the square root, we did in plus or minus, which means once again, we only have half of the shape, the ellipse this time. So now looking at this original equation, I have the root. It's a positive root, which means I'm only going to get non-negative numbers, 0 or positive numbers out of this, which means y can only be 0 or positive. So I want my ellipse centered at the origin. I want to go left and right 2. I want to go up 1, but not down because we've decided this is only the top half of the ellipse. Okay, one more just to make sure we're getting it. This one looks a little bit messier. Okay, so we have an x equals negative 15 times the square root of 1 minus y squared over 64. Okay, so once again, we can work our way through backwards. We get x over negative 15 equals the square root of 1 minus y squared over 64. You could go ahead and square both sides right away there. That would be fine. It doesn't matter, but I like to get rid of that 15 first. Next step is definitely to square both sides. So we get an x over negative 15. It's squared, so it doesn't really matter if you leave it positive or negative there. Equals 1 minus y squared over 64. Or you can square that 15, get 225. That's fine as well if you'd like. So either way, so I end up with an x squared over 225 plus a y squared over 64 equals 1, or if you like it better, you can say the x over 15 squared plus y over 8 squared equals 1. Oh, I'm sneaking off the bottom of the page. Sorry, I even made myself marks, so I wouldn't do that. Okay, so either way, I don't see any shift. I see an ellipse centered at the origin, where you have to go left and right 15. What in the world was I thinking with my grid? This isn't going to fit on my grid. We'll change the scale. And you have to go up and down 8. And now when we work our way backwards, this is fine. This is fine. So this is definitely an ellipse. This should still be an ellipse. Should still be an ellipse even if you move the y squared back over to the other side. Up here, is this where we lost it? Yeah, this is where we lost it. We didn't include the plus or minus, but I would actually work my way back even one more step because this is where the negative comes into play. That negative out in front means this is always going to give us a non-negative number, but then when we multiply by negative 15, that means we're always getting a negative number. So x's are always, I guess, non-positive, 0 or negative. Okay, so let's see if I can fix my scale here. We need to go up and down 8 and left and right 15. So let's just make this 4, 8, 12, 16. And the same thing here. Negative 12, negative 8, negative 4, 4, 8, 12, 16. Okay, so centered at the origin, we need to go left and right 15. So, oh, hold on. We decided it was only to the left. This is the left half of a circle, negative x's. So left 15, and then up and down 8, which is this one right here. Okay, so it looks like, let's see if I can make it pretty going this direction. Something like that. So the left half of an ellipse. All right, thanks for watching.